I am doing this piece because I've been getting a lot of pushes from Google on YouTube for for all these channels as well as all this other commercialized bullshit. And the thing is I really don't pay attention uh, to a lot except for hard hitting journalists like The Intercept. I also watch TYT, Democracy Now, TheRealNews.com, Secular Talk, The Humanist Report, RT, Al Jazeera, Telesur, Tom Hartman. Uh, basically, all the progressive news sources uh, who who have a tendency to be more upfront and have less spin and more truth to it. Now, uh, Google should, and this has been going. I've been doing this for quite some time, and so YouTube should have a record of what my likes and dislikes are in their algorithms. But the stuff about the NBA and NFL and Minecraft and all that. That's just pushing monetary uh, advertisement disguised as a legitimate interest for people to look at. And while it's annoying, it's something I bear up to because it's Google and Google has to make money. But what I don't agree with is this push of these right wing propaganda, independent right wing propaganda sources disguised as progressive. Now, I just gave a chance to a source called the Press for Truth. I guess it's a Canadian independent. And the thing is it's I should have known this when I after I watched one video without subscribing uh, to for the Press for Truth. I should have known that it was a right leaning non progressive channel because one of the first things that popped up when I was looking to subscribe, so I could just get a better idea of Press for Truth and see if I found another progressive channel. But the thing is it wasn't. And one of the other pushes for that channel, for channels that I might be interested in watching and looking into, was the Alex Jones. But I gave him the benefit of the doubt and watched another of their videos. And this is about free speech, just like all those supposed right wing free speechers, uh, and they had their agenda, and not completely, but fairly well, disguising it enough that if you're ignorant of the situation and you're susceptible, you might consider it to be progressive leaning, which it is not, because one of the things that they definitely used, and I guess you might call it propaganda. Dog whistling, was how they immediately vilified Antifa. Now, I wrote a big commentary on this free speech thing, because they were saying that, you know, the colleges were charging money uh, to hold free speech, while at the same time restricting free speech for the radical right wing. And so I don't know if there's any truth to it, and if they are doing it where they're charging money. Not only that, but it seems to be they accuse them of doubling the money. Um, and this is, of course, the other thing is that they plainly point out it's the left that's doing the blocking and censoring of the right. So there's two things: Antifa and the left being the hypocrites here. So, and while I will admit that there are left that can be hypocritical about this issue, and I can be accused of being that sort of leftist, because I do not agree with allowing that sort of Nazi, fascist, right wing, white supremacist ideology to be spouted either on TV or even on social media like YouTube. I do not believe in that, and I gave a prime example of why it shouldn't be allowed. And TYT and Democracy Now! And even Secular Talk and the Humanist Report, and I respect all those channels, and they are my go-to, some of my go-to sources. But I disagree with them on that, and the reason for that is that if anybody's actually looked into the documentary on Antifa, and this is and the history behind Antifa, and the fact that you can actually look into this history, and it's backed up, and verifiable, you'll know that Antifa had a movement back during when fascism was happening, which led into the first German fascist movement, and into World War I to World War II again, which was the Nazi fascist movement. So Antifa back then was trying to make people aware of the dangers of allowing the fascist rhetoric and all that from taking place, and having these fascist members and these white supremacist members getting into office, which is exactly what happened. So you have all these radical, virulent, hateful fascists that got into office, which led to World War I, and then World War II, which the fascist Antifa fought and tried to get people woke to understand what was going on and to stop it. So, as I said, I wrote all this commentary, and I put examples of what is happening in the present day, which is the same thing that happened back when Antifa first really came onto the scene to fight fascism, and how that led to, because of the inaction of the general public to take any serious note of this, how that led to the First World War, the Second World War. Now, this is happening in the present, but unlike the First World War and the Second World War, fascism isn't just in Europe. Fascism isn't just tied with Germany. It is happening in Western Europe again. It's happening in Eastern Europe. It's happening in the U.S. It's happening again in Japan. It's happening in India. It's happening in Turkey. It's happening in a virulent way all across the globe. It's happening in Australia. And the thing is when I'm saying it's happening, there are actual political parties who have actually gone into office, especially now. Remember, this is about fascism and the fight that Antifa takes. And back then, Antifa was slammed like they are now. They were jailed, they were killed, and they were gone after. Just like it's happening now. And Germany has a party that is directly descended from the original Second World War Nazi party, a carryover from the first, and they actually have an official position with the German government. So when I say there is a direct correlation to what's happening now and what happened historically, which is actually in the records, you can go through newspapers, you can go through media sources, you can go through all of it. You can use the Wayback Machine to see what even mainstream and independent media sources, as well as governmental sources in all these countries I've named, and you can see it all. And you can't tell me that we are not heading for a third world war. But this time, it's going to be catastrophic. And there is nowhere on the planet, not even in this country of the United States of America, that we will not feel the ramifications. Mexico, Central America, South America, radical elements are filling up. Canada. You cannot tell me that it's not happening. And we should be worried. We should be deathly worried, deathly afraid of what's going to happen. And if you're a minority in the United States, we will be victimized. There will be internment camps. There will be atrocities. And the fact that so many, even in the independent media sources, do not know that this is happening or have ignored it, with the exception of a few. TheRealNews.com tackles this. And they have talked about this. And this is one of my favorite choices for actual news. The Corbett Report talks about this. RT has covered this. Al Jazeera has covered this. All these supposed propaganda sources. Telesur has covered this. AJ Plus, which is an offshoot of Al Jazeera. Newsbroke, which is an offshoot of Al Jazeera. Jimmy Dore, one of my most favorite. Lee Kent, one of my most favorite. They have not covered this. Why? In the case of Jimmy Dore, because he doesn't have the resources. So you got all this happening. As well as on top of that, actual dangers of climate change. A recent release that the climate scientists are saying that it's not 97%. It's more like 99.99% consensus. So we have a choice. Either suffer and die at the hands of an engineered, man-made issue, which the Western governments and the US are pushing rapidly, saying that it's not actually taking place, and which people who are not in the radical element, like some of my family, do not realize any of the stuff about the radicalization popping up in governments that have direct ties to Nazism and the vulgar and rabidly horrid rhetoric and ideology behind them. There are too many people in this country who are tied into their insular and tiny community rather than taking a serious look at the very real dangers of that is actually taking place. We cannot allow this. We need to do something. And that something is what South Korea did when they got rid of their president. 12 million South Koreans for months went to the streets and protested in the candlelight vigil. South Korea, I believe, has like 30-something million. That's almost half the population moved to get the new president in. The man who is singularly responsible for what is happening with the peace talks in Korea. And Moon Jae-in is being brilliant about it. He's stroking the ego of Trump. Now, personally, on a personal level, I don't like the fact that he has to do that, but I understand. But have we all lost our sense of self-preservation? With the poisoning of our lands, of our waters, of our air, of our food, virtually everything that we consume, and the fascist movement to make sure that we have even less and less and less and less and more hardships that lead to actual problems that we all face. A lack of money, a lack of opportunity, a lack of resources, a lack of everything. And yet we have a radical fascist government which even Democrats have virtually no difference between Democrats and the Republicans. And we have independents in there who are backing. So you have to ask yourself, how do we take care of this? Well, one way to take care of this is to do what South Korean populace of 12 million out of, I believe, almost 30, a little bit more, did. The other is that we have to stop playing by their rules. Stop paying your taxes. Stop going to your jobs. Stop paying your bills. Stop it all. And as a community, from the local to the national, we have to come together as a community and use ourselves, our minds, and our bodies in a communal way, somewhat like what the Amish do. When the Amish, one of the Amish community suffers a loss, such as the burning down of their homes, the Amish community comes together and builds up and rebuilds that home. The community comes together. They use their knowledge, they use their skills. We need to start doing that. The solutions are there. And they are not difficult. But if we really value our children, if we really value ourselves, then we need to be intellectually, emotionally capable of being honest with ourselves. We cannot feed the monster and then blame the monster by continuing to feed this monstrosity. I have placed other videos. One I called the DNC Lies and Crimes. Now, that video, I actually state that I want to run for governor of Pennsylvania, but that wasn't the intention of that video. That video I put out was to give and advocate solutions that I know will work. Why do I know it will work? Because there's already been ample evidence of it. I forget what channel did a piece, but it was either one of the Discovery channels or one of the PBS channels that did this wonderful piece. And it was about renewable energy, and that renewable energy and the potential for this renewable energy that would last 1,000 years or more was about the methane deposits on the continental shelf under the ocean, at the edge of almost every landmass on Earth. Now, they did put an important caveat in that the scientists hadn't figured out how to extract it without causing catastrophic world-ending consequences. But one of the things that they pointed out was that there was enough frozen methane there to supply us with cheap, renewable energy that could be used globally for 1,000 years or more. Now, on top of that, they had a small snippet in that documentary where there was a woman, I believe is in Albania or something like that, some Baltic state. This woman farmer who owns a small farm there, she was using a simple technique of putting a condensing pipe into her rudimentary septic tank and using a hand crank to condense the methane out of there so that she could fuel her electric generator, and she could use it for cooking and provide a bit of heat. Now, this is just one woman on this little farm. Now, can you imagine if you applied that to each and every home, business, residence, office, condominium, apartment across the country and across the world? We could have cheap electricity that we have control over the pricing, so that no private person could have control. And on top of that, we would produce an excess amount, and we could use that to fuel our vehicles. All of our vehicles, from our boats to our planes to our ships, everything. But this solution never comes out. And it's a simple solution. And we would have control over it. Also, one of the huge contributors of global warming and climate change is massive amounts of methane going into our atmosphere. Well, here we go. We start fighting it by doing this. We take some of the massive amounts of methane going into our atmosphere. That's how we tackle the climate issue. Start fighting the climate issue. But this solution is not available. And nobody talks about it. They talk about geothermal. They talk about solar. They talk about wind. They talk about all this. But you know what? We don't really need it. Oh, of course, you could put in solar panels just as a backup, just to give us a little more extra space and extra security. We could do all this, but you won't hear it. You know, I've tried talking about this to people, but, you know, it all comes down to, oh, how much is it going to cost? And stuff like that. Rather than thinking for themselves and saying, wow, this is going to relieve me financially and put more money in my bank account, more money in my wallet. It's going to give me control, some more control in my life. You know, and I had actually people getting angry with me because I proposed and advocated a solution to help them. That's how fucked up the situation is. When people cannot see reason and logic, when they are bought into a system that is so corrupt, so dangerous, that it is a clear and present danger for each and every American and each and every person in the world. And it goes beyond, because it bleeds into our actual ecology. It's killing our ecology at an alarming rate. We have like 40 or 50%, if not more, of our animal life dying off into extinction. We have plants dying off into extinction. Plants that can be used for medical purposes, for medicinal purposes, and yet we're killing them off. We're killing off tons of things that could serve us to the good. Why? Because we refuse to allow the divestment and giving the power to this corporatocracy of this criminal organization that resembles nothing more clearly than organized crime. All they have is the veneer, a very thin veneer of legitimacy. And that's because we allow this veneer rather than taking direct action, rather than being concerned about our own personal, everyday non-existence, really, because we don't really have a life. We are not living a life. It's a pseudo life. It's an illusion of life. If you can't care for yourself, if we can't care for ourselves and value ourselves, how is it that they are going to value us? We have to understand that there is nothing ever been built, ever been created, that money has ever made. Why do I say this? Let's say I had $1 billion or even $100 billion. Now, if I were to point at that stack of $100 billion and say, go build me that bridge, or go build me that dam, or go build me the road, is the money going to be able to do it? No. Every great thing that was ever built, even if it was built under oppressive and violent and vicious ways, such as the pyramids, basically using slave labor to build the pyramids and slave labor to build the Great Wall, all these pillars of accomplishment, none of it could have been built without the actual humans. The people that came up with the designs, they couldn't have built it. They could have thrown all the money they wanted, but they couldn't build it without the people. So we have to understand there is nothing that is built, grown, or used that did not require humans, that did not require people. And while a lot of the stuff that was built that is held in such grandeur was done with violence against people, turning him into nothing more than chattel, an expendable chattel. It still got done. And that is the point. It got done. And it wasn't because of money. It wasn't because of gold. It wasn't because of silver or platinum or anything, or diamonds or rubies or any of this nonsense that the system has pushed. And by buying into this monetary value system and contributing to it, we have enslaved ourselves. They talk about drug addiction, but you know what? The biggest addiction is the acceptance of this falsehood of money. So yes, is there some truth in that money is the root of all evil? Yes. Some. But that's only because we have allowed it. So we are also responsible for allowing this to happen. There is a completely different way for us to live. A way that does not require people to work. A way that does not require people to die for the things that we use. A way that gives us the technology like the smartphone, which I'm using to broadcast this. We could have that. And you know what? We could have already been in space. We could have already been traveling to other worlds. But this system makes it so that the opportunity to follow your dreams, I mean your real dreams, and actually have true meaning is suppressed. Why? Because we are bought into the very game that allows a few to have more than all others. And that is a problem because it creates stress, it creates mental instability, emotional instability, physical instability. It creates and allows for the ideology of white supremacy. It creates and allows the thinking of superiority no matter what race you may be. It creates a system where division can be used to divide us, to distract us. It creates a system where our values, where our sensibilities, where our decency, where our morality, our ethics, and everything else is so fuzzy, it might as well be non-existent. So the system where we value real knowledge and always work to have new knowledge and to back up the existing knowledge, that is what we should be having. A system that promotes that, where we value knowledge of ourselves, of the world we live in, and everything that shapes it. Because that way, we could spend our days with our children, with our family, with our community, just thinking and working on things that actually matter, that will actually make us happy, that will not require us to have this illusionary, engineered and fabricated system where this fantastical thing of love and so on and so forth. We would actually know what love is in a genuine way, because it would not be forced, because our emotional and intellectual capacity would be such that we would recognize it innately, because we would naturally go to those who share our ideas, our common interests. That is what we would want. This other thing about automation. You know what? Automation is a great thing. It really is. Because we could use automation with the level of technology we have today. We could use automation to provide us with our smartphones, with our TVs, with our vehicles, with our buildings, with our infrastructure, everything. With our food, water, everything. We could have it all and not cost us anything. All we have to do is supply the information, and the automation system could make it. And every one of us could get it without requiring somebody to drive a vehicle or fly a plane or a boat. We wouldn't be worried about lack of resources. We would have a resource that would be responsible, as the automation system could also take the stuff, the excess, back and responsibly reuse this. So we're not dumping toxic stuff that's poisoning our ecosystem, which is poisoning us and killing us, literally. We could have that, and it would be perfect. But we will never have that system, not until we understand that the system that we so value, we have placed this insane trust in, is literally killing us, because we are contributing to the monstrosity we have created and we are perpetuating. Understand what I started to talk about. We will face a catastrophic crisis very soon. And the potential for World War III is almost the next second away. And if we want to head that off, then we need to take the initiative. And we need to bulk up our courage. We need to steal our morality. Not in stealing, but I mean like in steel, like the metal. We need to steal our morality, our ethics, and say enough is enough. And we need to show that we stand united for a future. Otherwise, we will live as chattel. We will live as slaves, serfs, indentured servants, as nothing more than commodities and things and numbers. And we will serve the minority, the true minority. The true minority doesn't have a skin color. It doesn't have a race issue. The true minority are the ones that so many of us are starting to understand is literally attacking us and have declared war on us, on general. We are not the general public. We are not the everyday people. We are not the average. We are singularly the backbone. We are singularly the most important factor. We are the power. But we can't have that power. We can't have any of that if we cannot stand united and stop the corruption. And corruption is a misleading word because it's not corruption. It's criminal. The things that they do is literally criminal. And we allow criminals to run us, to order us. As I stated, they act like organized criminals. It is things that we would pay dearly for, but they do not. In case in point, there's a Bill Cosby. He was found guilty. And Bill Cosby is most certainly, in my opinion, and in my book, guilty of all the accusations leveled against him and all the charges that were leveled against him. There's no ifs, ands, buts about it. And he should go to jail. And he should die in jail. Because that's a crime that's so heinous, so vile, that he deserves it. But I point this out. Where is Bill O'Reilly? Where are all these other white men who have committed the same thing as Bill Cosby? Is anybody hearing about them going in front of a court? It's ridiculous to see Good Morning America, and they bring in one of the people that was on this young man that was on the jury, a white young kid, 22 years old, and he states he didn't know anything really about Cosby. Well, then he must have been hiding in some sort of dark cave. But the irony is that it's a white kid saying, oh, yes, he definitely did it, and so on and so forth. But I also put this caveat out. Police, or the stormtroopers, if you want to put it, the hands, the feet of the criminal organization. So basically, the bashers and the enforcers of mafia, organized mafia, right? They're not making distinctions nowadays. We've seen the evidence of them killing white people. And I know for a fact that white people are paying attention, most especially the right wingers. So what's the point of all this? While there is an issue of racial inequality in this country, and it's not inequality, it's criminal action against people who don't look like white people. It's criminal. And there's no ifs, ands, buts about it. I don't care. I don't care what sort of excuses white people will excuse. But the simple fact of it is criminal. It is violent. It is murder. It is rape. It is everything that we hold as being criminal and negative. But here's the thing. The whole point about this is that, yes, racism exists. Yes, there's inequality. But you know what? Here's the thing. These criminals do not make a distinction between whether you're white or not. And if you're a right winger, they will use you. And they will exploit you. And they will take everything they can possibly from you. Just as long as you allow it. These criminals don't care if you're a right winger. They don't care if you're a Nazi. They don't care if you're alt-right, if you're a white supremacist. Even the heads, these people that get in front of the camera, like David Duke and that other idiot who's in the news so much. They don't care because they are part of it. They're in the joke. You are the joke. We are all the joke. We are all the joke. We are all the victims. And we will all pay equally for us allowing them by playing into the very game system that they've created so that they can sip their brandies, their champagne. They can live in their $100 million mansions and have $1 million vacation homes. Sean Hannity, prime example of a complete douchebag that the right wing is so uphold. He has over 800 properties. And it's not simply black people he's going after either and screwing over either. It's not black and brown people, and it's not Asians like myself that he's simply going after. If you're white and you're poor, he's going after you too. Because he doesn't have the ideology. Oh, he may say it on Fox. And he may say it online. And he may say it on casts like mine. But he doesn't actually believe it. He's out there to make money. He's out there to have that life of leisure. And that is what you are feeding by buying it to him and feeding it to him and supplying him. You might as well take out your wallet, give it to him. You might as well just give him the bank account, your bank accounts. You might as well just hand over your property, everything that you own, even the shirts off your backs. There is no principled politician. Even Bernie, for all his steadfastness throughout the years, has compromised, and compromised in such a way that it screwed over millions. And that's because he had to play partisan politics for his state. You cannot be a representative, a true servant of the people, when you play these partisan games for people in your state, when it's going to actually come to bite everybody else and screw over the country's population. Elizabeth Warren does this. Tulsi Gabbard does this. And these are the better angels. And these people at least have an ounce of morality, of ethics, which cannot be said of the vast majority. And it's not just the federal level. It's on your local level. It's in your state level. It's in your judicial system, your judges, your district attorneys, your regulatory agencies. And we've all seen examples of it. You got Scott Pruitt. It's in your law enforcement agencies, whether it's local, state, or federal. It's in your intelligence community, which is complete bullshit. Because the only intelligence that they're feeding is like, if they can point to me, and they probably will, they'll point to me and say, he's the enemy. And they'll have you believing I am. They'll have you believing that I am some sort of terrorist, some sort of they'll put in something violent, like he's a child molester or he's a rapist. They'll use anything. They'll go to any lengths. But if you are watching me, you know that that's not the case. You know I'm not advocating any of that. You know where I stand. You can hear it in my tone. You can see it in my body language. You can see it in the fact that that while I'm doing this, my phone is moving. You know I am genuine. But that's what the system is. It's vilifying the actual angel. And I'm not calling myself an angel. I'm just using that euphemism. Because I'm no angel. Because if I actually had the courage, and if I actually had the fortitude, I wouldn't be doing just these videos. I wouldn't be just commenting on YouTube videos I've seen. I would be out there, standing out in the rain, in the snow, in the burning sun. I would be out there, not only just speaking, not just talking the talk, but I'd be walking the walk. But I'm not. I've made excuses for myself. And I'm ashamed of that. And I should be ashamed of that. But I'll make an excuse right now. I'm human, I'm flawed, and I have issues. I suffer from PTSD. My early childhood was horrible. My own birth mother tried to drown me. I was molested by an older cousin, a male cousin, before I was adopted. I was sent to an orphanage where I was beaten by supposed Catholic nuns mercilessly to the point that I jumped out of a 7-story building to try to get away from it, scraping myself down on the on the on the on the um, on the balconies. Sent to another orphanage. After that, where there was all these young kids who were actually playing pornography, where young children could see it, talking in these graphic ways around young children. I was 7.5 when I finally got adopted, along with my birth brother. And I was fortunate in that my birth brother and mine got adopted by a wonderful white couple, a loving white couple. And I love them dearly. But they are flawed. They are flawed greatly because they refuse to acknowledge what's happening. But again, they are human and they are bought into it. And it's hard to be truthful with yourself. It's extremely hard. The easiest thing is to get angry and get outraged and stop blaming others and stop blaming everything else except for yourself. Nobody likes to be criticized. But when you can be critical with yourself, you can start thinking critically about everything else. And I'm talking about intelligently critical, just like how I've just done. And that's what we need. We need honesty with ourselves. And we need to be able to be critical of ourselves in an intelligent way. Not in a self-flagellation. That's just being utterly stupid. No, we need to be honest with ourselves. And we need to realize that we are part of the problem. I mean, how much sense does it make that a few, and there's probably less than 100, and evidence shows that even that 100 is generous. There are 6 people in this country that own more wealth. And they always talk about that. They own more wealth, more resources than the bottom 90% of the world's population, not just this country. How sick and twisted is that? And that's because we've allowed them to commoditize us. We've allowed them to make us into that piggy bank. And they are going willfully into that piggy bank and taking everything they possibly can. At the same time, blaming you and me and everybody else for the criminal actions that they are doing. And we have accepted this. And we have bought into this. And whose fault is that? Oh, we can argue that because the funding cuts to education, because of social economic arena, they can put it in all the. But you know what? Here's the thing. I'm on early Social Security right now. I barely can get by every month. And I never graduated. I graduated high school, but I barely graduated high school. I barely graduated. And as a younger man, in my mid-teens to my late teens, I started seeing what was wrong. Oh, I wasn't as clear as I am now, but I started seeing it wrong. But there's evidence that kids these days are waking up far faster than I ever did. And that gives me some hope. But you know what? We are still in a system. And the children, unfortunately, are playing also by the system. And that saddens me as well. But they are taking an initiative. And that's something to be proud of. We have to stop thinking in terms of nations and countries and states and towns and small communities. We have to understand that we are a global community, and that global community includes the plants, the animals, the land. We are not just endangering ourselves, we are endangering the very home, the one true home that we all in common share, and that is the planet we call Earth. That's our only home. The homes that we so talk about, our apartments, our houses, and all that other stuff, our condos, those are just residences. That's where we sleep. That's where we eat. But we couldn't have any of that without the planet. Our true home. And we are killing our home. And by buying into the system and allowing this monstrous system to continue, we are taking a little hand in killing our home. We cannot continue to live in our little singular communities. We have to think in a broader community sense. And we have to accept that what we face individually, we face on a global scale. Because we have all in common that issue. You know, I just thought of something. There was an interesting thing that, even independent media and mainstream was talking about Cape Town, South Africa, and how they have a water shortage there. But AJ Plus did a great piece on it. All right. So you know who's actually having the water shortage? It's not the white populace in Cape Town. No. It's the black populace who's feeling the water shortage, whose water is being rationed. Because they show video evidence where the white community, which is almost next door to the literal slums, okay, where these people are living in these shacks made of cobbled together material, typical of what mainstream media in the West likes to point out. These little shanties where they use cast off wood and metal sheets that they could find to cobble together these residences. And there are some that are more firm, but not much. But they're the ones actually having the water shortage, not the white people living in their multi-million-dollar homes or multi-$100,000 homes. They're the ones with greenery on their property, while right next door, within view of the white community neighborhoods, they can see barren land. And they can see the devastation on that side. And that is why there's a water shortage in Cape Town, South Africa. because the whites have decided that they can have the water, they can have the nice homes, they can have the comfortable life, they can have the life of leisure, they can do the shopping for these ridiculous expenditures, all the goodies that the West likes to push as being, oh, status and importance. What is having all of that going to matter? They don't seem to understand that global warming and climate change isn't going to make a distinction of whether or not you own $100 million home or you have 15 yachts and 200 vacation properties. If you're the president of a country, or if you're the prime minister, or if you're a king, it won't matter. If you're a premier, it doesn't matter. It doesn't make a distinction. It's the same sort of distinction that a nuclear holocaust will have. But you know what? These idiots think that they're smart, that they're clever, that, oh, gee, we can go underground, and we can take the lesser fools with us to serve us in these underground bunkers. Oh, and I love the case of the show, The 100, where they make or other ones like that, with the 100, where they make a space station so that they can wait out the nuclear holocaust. But you know what? That's all crap. That's all false. If you talk to anybody who's actually had the education and actually has done the research and actually has logic, reasoning logic, they will tell you that's not a solution. They will tell you that you can't survive like that. That something catastrophic will happen. And what is all those movies and TV shows about stuff like 100 have in common? They all have in common a disastrous end. And it comes back to bite them in the ass. So, once again, they ignore all of this. Why? Who's got the fantasy? Who's got the fantasy? Who's got the illusion? They do. And they would like all of us to live under this delusion. It's time to wake up. It's time to be honest. And it's time to take action. Otherwise, we have no one else to blame but ourselves. Because we have fed the monster. The monster that we rail against. We have fed it. We have perpetuated it. And that is no lie. Facts are facts. And there is no such thing as alternative facts. The ideology is completely false and fatal to think that you're so smart, you're so clever, that he won't come back to actually kill you, because that's what it will happen. And it won't be pretty. I hope anybody watching this, and I see that I had one like. Well, doesn't matter. Even if it's just one person, it's valuable. But I hope if anybody in the future watches this, they understand. They are waking up. We don't have much time. And I'm not being hyperbolic. All you have to do is look into it yourself. And it doesn't take a lot of time or effort to do so. Thank you for watching. And I hope that we can all stand in solidarity and understanding and work to preserve ourselves in unity.